We will get started here then. Yeah, thanks for joining us for this careers and sustainability Q&A with Smallfood. We've got Kath, Perry, Marc St-Onge, Julia Rossi, and Emma Taniguchi, apologize, with us from Smallfood. So very much appreciate having them here. Kean, you want to go to the next slide? Just go to the quick agenda. So I'll just quickly introduce the Careers and Sustainability Program, let you know what that's all about. I apologize that the intro is not to Sustainable Blue. This is to Smallfood. This is, I was scrambling a little bit here today. That's on me. My bad. I am sorry. This is indeed with Smallfood. Most of this session, and I'll let Marc and Kath kind of give just an introduction to Smallfood, what they do there, why they're such a fantastic company. Most of the session will be just a Q&A discussion. By all means, please encourage questions. The whole objective of this is to have that back and forth and learn more about the types of careers that are available at Smallfood and what's coming up and what's next. Next slide, Kia. So Careers and Sustainability is a program began back in the spring. Really, it's a partnership between the Nova Scotia Innovation Hub and Ignite. And so the Nova Scotia Innovation Hub is a not-for-profit with a mandate of advancing the bioeconomy in Nova Scotia. So we deliver a range of programming that I won't get into here, careers and sustainability being one. Kia and Tristan, maybe if you want to touch on Ignite once I wrap up here. But the objective of careers and sustainability is to connect job seekers with Nova Scotia's bioeconomy employers. And we do that in a number of ways. We are running an awareness campaign, experiential learning, of which this Q&A session is a part. We offer opportunities for upskilling for our good candidates, and then there's wage subsidies available for companies like Smallfood to bring on new employees. Kia, Tristan, did you guys want to just touch on Ignite quickly?
Yeah, sure. Sorry, I didn't know if you wanted to jump in there or not. But yeah, I work for Ignite, so I do marketing and youth engagement, and Ignite is a rural innovation hub. So we collaborate with startups, youth, industry, and community to support new opportunities to advance the rural communities in Nova Scotia. So part of the reason why we wanted to join this is advancing those bioeconomy employers such as Smallfood and many of the other ones that we've worked alongside. And Kia, if you wanted to.
Yeah, we were kind of like looking at each other like who's gonna unmute first. Yeah, I'm Kia, I'm the industry project manager, and I'm actually based up here in Halifax, but I've been working with Ignite for 2 years, and being part of careers and sustainability has been a big part of the industry work that we're doing and supporting industry, especially of course the bioeconomy. So yeah, we've been doing a lot of great work with Ryan, Nova Scotia Innovation Hub. So pretty excited I can keep doing that.
All right, I think you can stop the screen share there, and we'll hand over to Marc and the team at Smallfood to introduce yourselves.
Okay, well, it's such a pleasure to be here, and to recognize the amazing things that are happening here in Nova Scotia. Of course, a lot of thanks goes to the Nova Scotia Innovation Hub and Ignite. There's truly a groundswell of exciting new developments and activity and startups in our province here that will truly define tomorrow's economy in this part of the world, and for opportunities for young people. So Ryan, I'm going to actually help you recover a little bit here from your agenda. I think what you meant is introduction to sustainability in the blue economy.
Yes, that's exactly what I meant.
From the Smallfood perspective, of course. Right?
Exactly.
Yeah, and of course we have, I don't know, do you want to, the other Smallfood members just want to quickly say hi there?
Sure, yeah. I want to Kath Perry, I'm the Director of People and Process process with Smallfood as well as sort of a larger ecosystem of companies that we kind of operate together with some of our systems. So been really lucky to help build and grow the Smallfood team. Emma, do you want to?
Yeah, I can go. My name is Emma, and I've been at Smallfood for a couple months now. I'm a co-op student, so this is my third co-op term. I go to Dalhousie University. I'm doing a dual major in ocean science and environmental science. So it's been really cool to work at a job where those two converge, and to see how science is when there's like an economic base to it. So yeah, that's what I like working here.
Thanks, Julia.
Hi, I'm Julia, and I'm also a co-op student. This is my second co-op, and I'm a student at Acadia University doing environmental science. So one of the main things that drew me to Smallfood was the sustainability aspect.
Okay, well, thanks. A small representation of our pretty amazing team at Smallfood, and so I can dig in a little bit to, or share with you the backstory and what Smallfood is really doing to, we say, evolve how the world is nourished. So we truly are part of the blue economy, and I think that's one of the most exciting sectors across the entire globe. You know, we've always said, you know, our oceans are such an untapped resource, and I think that's really showing why that is so true, with understanding the immense diversity of natural resources, and in this case, marine microorganisms, to do some pretty cool stuff to really transform industries as important and as broad as food. So as Julia was kind of saying, you know, she was drawn to this from the environmental perspective, and you know, I'd say that's the same thing for me. The context that, you know, I hold as an entrepreneur at this point in my journey is really sustainability and wellness. I think it's really two sides to that same coin. You know, we need to really focus on how do we really nourish and improve the wellness of the people around the world, and then at the same time, how can we do that in the context of sustainable resource management? How do we tackle some of these huge challenges that we have been presented with, and more in particular, you know, climate change? And I like to say, you know, we've kind of entered the era of the meaningful economy. So it's like, how do, as entrepreneurs, as you know, business leaders, as scientists, and etc., how do we identify and tackle some of humanity's biggest challenges through the lens of kind of entrepreneurship, scientific research and exploration? And the Smallfood story actually started back probably about 10 years ago. And it was this idea that the idea that protein is becoming more and more a scarce commodity is not a new thing. I think, you know, people have been talking about it, you know, for the last 10 or 15 years, but without really any solutions. And today we hear a lot about kind of how do we transition away from kind of primarily animal agriculture, which is one of the big drivers of climate change, more into a plant-based diet. And you say, well, okay, that's great. Then, you know, we just need to kind of transition people from animal agriculture into eating more plants and plant proteins. And there's lots of really great development going on there, including right here in Canada. Canada's kind of positioning itself as being one of those real powerhouses in plant protein, you know, production. However, when you do the math, it still doesn't work. With a population of that will eventually approach 10 billion people, there's not enough land out there. And so, and what we're seeing already is some of the land that is being converted into either fields for grazing of cattle, or for growing some of these higher protein, you know, crops like, you know, soy protein. It's coming at the expense of other valuable natural resources, including, you know, the Amazon rainforest, you know, which is impacting the livelihoods of many traditional peoples. And also it's a huge impact on the necessary diversity that we need for a sustainable world, and a huge carbon sink. So that's why microbes became such a huge interest to me. Why microbes? Well, microbes are considered to be the most energy efficient biological production system that we have on this planet. And in the world of the kingdom of microbes, we have so much immense diversity, which is kind of exciting, but inherently that's part of the challenge. And so we like microbes for producing things like, nutritional ingredients or food ingredients, proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, because unlike if you're growing pea or soy, there's so much energy and time that goes in for the plant to produce roots, stems, leaves, pods, and all we're after is a very small portion of that biomass. And to really go from preparing the soil all the way to having, pea protein and soy protein to deliver to customers, you're talking about a 7 to up to 9 month, process. Microbes, if you find the right microbe for the right job, their ability to produce biomass and a useful biomass is really unprecedented. So compared to that 7 months for producing maybe soy or pea protein, we can do that in 24 hours. That's really the magnitude of order of magnitude of difference that we have. But like I said, you have to find the right microbe for the right job. And so this whole project started with this idea that we want to solve for protein. And so we created this very long, detailed specification for what would the perfect protein look like. If you could say, forget about looking at going out there into nature and just plucking different microbes from different sources and trying to characterize them, says, oh, I wonder if there's anything useful here. Say, okay, what would that perfect microbe be? What kind of protein? How much protein? How quickly can it produce? What are the amino acid composition? What are those metabolic traits? As well as a few other kind of we call marketing specifications, which is it's for food. So the world is going to prefer something that is non-GMO, free of allergens and et cetera, et cetera. So from there, it's about figuring how can we amass the largest library collection of microbes that we can start to screen. And so initially this was agnostic in terms of what type of microbe. So, we'll call it the funnel that we were building to look from included things from bacteria, yeast, other forms of fungi, such as, mycoproteins, as well as aquatic, microorganisms like, thrustochitриds and, blue-green algae, et cetera. So the amount of microbes that were collected and initially screened from was 20,000. So that's really one of the really unique parts of the Smallfood story, is because I don't even know if that type of a massive screening project has ever really been carried out by any other company. And it really took 20,000 unique microorganisms to produce the one candidate. That one candidate was the match for that technical specification. So if we found the perfect microbe, this is what it would look like. That microbe happened to be a marine microorganism, and from a family we call thrustochitриds. Now, thrustochitриds are already used in industrial purposes to produce, various industrial chemicals and even some other food ingredients. It's one of the most important microbes for producing lipids. However, within thrustochitриds, there's a huge amount of diversity. And so the selection criteria, of course, was focused initially on protein. And we found, wow, this organism produces a lot of protein. So when you dry down the biomass, it contains around 65%, sometimes up to 70% protein. That's amazing when you compare it to, pea and soy protein, which, on a dry basis might be 20% protein. If you look at a steak or a chicken breast or a fish fillet, around 20% protein. But it's not just any protein; it had to have the right amino acids. And most plant-based proteins, as well as other microbe proteins that are being developed around the world, don't have the optimal amount of certain essential amino acids. And I don't know if you've ever really looked at some of the products, some of these kind of meat, hamburger kind of analog products that you see at the market, the grocery store. And a good example would be, Maple Leaf, one of the biggest protein producers here in Canada. They have a product under their Light Life brand, and they have to add, they're using pea protein as the primary protein source, and they have to add a specific amino acid in there as a separate ingredient. That one is called methionine. It's one of the sulfur-based amino acids. They need to do that to make their formula more nutritionally complete for human consumption. So they anticipate people might eat a lot of these. And if they do, based on just relying too much on pea protein, you start to become a little bit deficient in these amino acids. So that's why it was really critical to do such exhaustive work to source a microbe that had really, the comparator was beef. We say, well, okay, beef is kind of like the gold standard. So we want something that has all those amino acids in the ratios similar to beef. And that's what we found. So from that point on, it says, okay, you're bringing something from the wild. You need to domesticate that. So you bring it into the lab and you hope it grows, because growing in the growing in the wild is so much different from growing in a flask, in the laboratory. And so that was the next phase of the project, is like, how do you grow biomass? And, and then going from a single flask into larger actual fermenters up until eventually you want to get to industrial scale. So industrial scale for doing fermentations is in the, the 100 to 200,000 liter range. And so the forces inside those types of fermentation reactors are so different from a flask, and they're so different from what happens in the wild. So once again, you need to find organisms that have that ability to scale efficiently into those larger industrial kind of bioreactors. And the other thing too is, well, it produces protein. What else does it produce? So this is where we get into kind of more the metabolomic screening of these organisms, because we want to be able to produce protein, and we want to be able to produce it very cost effectively, because if this is going to cost $30 a kilo, it might be a fantastic protein, but it certainly isn't accessible to the world. And it's really, the context here is providing proteins for the world, because we need to feed not just one country, we need to feed many. And so we do the metabolomic screening, and we found, wow, this organism is a really great producer of nutritional lipids. And most of those lipids are DHA. Wow, it's kind of like the vegan version of fish oil. And so there's an existing market for that. And then we looked at the polysaccharide and said, oh, wow, that's really interesting. It's the same, has the same chemical identity as what comes from seaweed called carrageenan. And carrageenan has a market as well, right? It's very, very much used in kind of food binding, texturizing, stabilizing. So now we start to look at this from this concept we call circular monetization, where you look at the sum of all the parts and how you can allocate different costs of production to different ingredients. So that's really how we built the model around Smallfood. Of course, all this is taking the time and effort of really great scientists, right? So even just to get it to this particular stage, we need so many different disciplines, from fermentation scientists, chemical engineers, lab technicians, analytical technicians. It's a multidisciplinary kind of approach from a scientific perspective. And so the work that we've done to date have got us into this really nice stage where we're now kind of thinking, how do we bring this technology, all the data, all these kind of key metrics of knowing how to do what we do very, very efficiently into these larger industrial scales. So it's a really, so it's been a long time to kind of get to this stage, but we have thankfully, achieved a lot of key milestones. We've solved a lot of technical challenges, not always easy, but we did do that. There's always going to be lots of new challenges. Even once we scale this particular organism to industrial scale, we always need to be thinking, how do we optimize the process? How do we create more functionality in those ingredients, right? So you can produce a protein, and you can isolate the protein from the rest of the biomass. But the way that you process that will determine how it's going to behave in like a food matrix, right? So this is where you really have to start to understand the market side of it. What are the challenges aside from just sustainable protein that these food manufacturers have identified for their next generation of food products? So it could be plant-based milks. It could be alternative cheese producers like plant-based cheeses. It could be a number of different kind of beverage categories. It could be just someone looking for protein fortification. They want to make their line of pastas. They want to do a high protein version of that. Maybe it's dietary supplements. So this is where you really have to now solve, really engage with your marketplace and help solve their specific customer, issues. So I guess what I want to show is like the science really never stops, and these types of platforms have so much flexibility. It's not like it just does one thing and it only does one thing. The more you bring new ideas about changing process parameters, developing new ways of processing the downstream side of it, once you grow the biomass, what can you do with it? They just unlock all kinds of new market opportunities, to help the company grow and, to help the company's customers really innovate within their kind of portfolio of products. So that's kind of more from a scientific lens. And the other thing I probably add too is like, we're not just interested in one strain. This is the other part of really growing, the company is there's still such an untapped, we're just scratching the tip of the iceberg in terms of microbes that are out there. We know they're out there in nature, and they have so much potential to really serve humanity in doing it, once again, while addressing all these other issues of, social justice, environmental justice. And so it's just one of the most interesting and exciting fields to be in. And I'll throw a little kind of thing a fun fact about Smallfood that you probably wouldn't think. We're actually classified as aquaculture. And aquaculture is such an important industry here in Nova Scotia. But when they developed the aquaculture kind of guidelines, they never contemplated that, well, it's not only seaweed or fish or shellfish that we can get from the ocean environment and bring it into a controlled growing environment on land, it's also microbes. And so now the Nova Scotia aquaculture industry is really excited about, wow, Smallfood is paving the way for this opportunity to really expand the presence of and the exports of aquaculture to the rest of the world. We're just focused, of course, just in doing that using marine-based microbes.
Mm-hmm. Interesting. Thank you, Marc. I want to open it up to, we had 11 people registered to attend, and Annette and Brian, not to put you on the spot, but you're the two who showed up. So I'm not sure where the other 9 are. But Annette and Brian, I want to open it up to you if you have any questions for the team here. But just first, Marc, how does one go about screening 20,000 microbes? Something like a one by one, very slowly, or is there an algorithm of some kind? How do you actually do that?
Yeah, so I'm going to qualify that by saying it wasn't the current team at Smallfood that did that work. So the original research was carried out by another company in Southern California, And that company was founded by a scientist by the name of Craig Venter. And anyone that might have an interest or knowledge of the genomics field is one of the most famous scientists in that field is Craig Venter. He was really instrumental in this Human Genome Project, which I think started under the Reagan administration, then followed into probably the Clinton administration in the US. And, they set out to be the first to ever, sequence the entire human genome. And so when they started that work, I think it cost about $3 billion to sequence the human genome. And it took a very, very long time. It was a very monumental project. Now we can do that for just a few dollars. So one of the benefits that came out of the Human Genome Project was high throughput screening technology. So you can really do genomic and metabolomic, research in a more rapid kind of way using these new tools. And so Craig Venter, formed this company, and their main interest was to solve for biofuels using microbes. But then they realized, well, there's so many other things that they could solve for, including, protein using this approach. So they did, they raised hundreds of millions of dollars, and they built huge libraries. So they either went out into nature and they prospected their own organisms, or they acquired libraries that were already constructed by other organizations around the world. And so that's how eventually they built this massive, massive library of 20,000 organisms, and then applied their genomic capabilities, which were really, best in class at that particular time that was being done. It took them really about 6 years to do that full extensive work. And then, in 2018, well, I guess initiated in 2016, but I started to form a kind of a joint venture with that group, and was able to fully acquire that IP into Smallfood. And so but we'll continue to do that kind of work, in terms of continuing to build our library and kind of doing, a lot of the screening characterization work. It's because beyond what the previous company was doing, we want to go much deeper into these metabolites. So for instance, we want to understand what kind of carotenoids, what kind of pigments, is it producing? Some of the secondary metabolites, and referencing the natural products database, which is like around 10,000 natural chemicals ever found in nature and published. And, doing those types of metabolomic screens, we're already finding some really, really interesting things. There's very novel chemistry in some of these marine microbes, such that these compounds have never been identified in nature before. Sometimes that's good, sometimes that's bad, and sometimes it means nothing. But nevertheless, the more characterization that we can do, and then the algorithms that we can build to select for certain microbes, for certain applications, just expands the whole market opportunity and the challenges that we can solve with our platform.
Fantastic. I just see a comment from Annette there that she's no questions from her, but she's happy to sit back and listen. Maybe Julia and Emma, we invited you here because your positions are supported by Careers in Sustainability. So it's always nice to kind of put some faces to the names and see that the program's having benefits. So maybe Julia, start with you, not to put you on the spot, but maybe just take a few minutes and talk about your background and what brought you to Smallfood, and then Emma, same for you, if that's okay.
Yeah, so I'm a student at Acadia University. I'm currently in my third year, but going into my fourth year. I found Smallfood. It was listed on on my school's co-op portal. So like, oh, okay, that company seems interesting. I want to look more into it. And I think the main thing, as I said earlier, is the sustainability aspect. As an environmental science student, sustainability, I think, is one of my main concerns. And also, like food security is a big interest of mine, and just food in general. So the combination of the two, it was cool to get a combination of those two. And also the ability to, I think as Emma said earlier, to combine science and kind of the business aspects that are associated with science companies. Learning more about that has been really interesting.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, for me, my last co-op job, I worked at a microalgae lab at Dal, actually, in the oceanography department. And that was more of an education-based lab. I was working with a PI who was actually the head of the department, the oceanography department. And he supported a lot of master's and honors students in his lab, working on a bunch of different projects. So I had the opportunity to kind of help out a couple of master students with their project. And their project was actually finding the best autotrophic microalgae strain to produce the most, like the best profile of lipids, proteins, valuable vitamins, things like that. So I really liked that. Actually, through that job, I realized that I wanted to go into research after. So when I was looking for my next co-op position, I was looking for a job that was similar to that. And this is pretty much as similar as I could get. The only difference is this is like a real like business lab. We're actually producing something with like a means to an end, rather than just looking for like the best kind of possible outcome. Yeah, and I would say the major difference here is that there's a lot more at stake. Like if you mess up something in an experiment, you just try again. But if you mess up something here, it's a lot more detrimental to the whole process. But that having that kind of like stressor put on your work is really beneficial in terms of just developing bench skills and attention to detail. Things like that. It feels really good to be in a job where I feel like my work is actually like doing something good. Like we're working towards a goal that I am totally on board with. So yeah, that's what drew me to the job, and I'm really liking it so far.
Great, glad to hear. Appreciate that. Brian, over to you.
Yes, thank you. I always have questions. There's so much I don't know. I guess just to highlight myself, I work with Department of Agriculture, and I'm in knowledge and technology transfer, looking at the food industry, I guess, in Nova Scotia. It's my hobby as well. I engage with it 3 times a day, more if I can, less if I try to keep my weight down. But anyways, I love food and enjoy food. I guess, Mark, my first question is, what type of company are you? Are you a scientific company, an ingredient producer, a value-added company? And maybe you can answer that, where you are now and where you're going to be in a couple of years.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. Good question. So we would be positioned as an ingredient company. You know, I think some of the value add that we do would be, you know, how we create different functionality to the ingredients that we produce, as well as we are now doing some, I know Julia and Emma haven't really had a chance to be exposed to it, but they're producing the raw material that is helping us do some additional research, which is food application research. So part of the responsibility for Smallfood in terms of developing the market for this is doing food application research, where we figure out how can you use these ingredients in different food concepts. And right now, a lot of the focus for us is on developing seafood analogs. So the next generation of seafood products. And so with our biomass, because it's supplying, if we take the whole cell biomass, we supply both protein as well as DHA. Well, that's exactly what this emerging category of alternative seafood producers need. They need protein, sustainable protein, high quality protein, and they need DHA, and we can deliver that in one ingredient. But we need to do the research to show how can you use this, what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, and so we've been working to develop and continue to work to develop things like a fish fillet, call it a vegan fish fillet, fish cakes, fish burgers, fish sticks, those vegan sashimi, all with the basis of this wholesale ingredient that's supplying protein and DHA. So we're always thinking, how do we not just simulate taste and texture, but how do we actually approximate the similar nutritional values? Because if there's a segment of the population that feels, well, I would love to eat fish because I know it provides so much good nutrition, but I prefer a more of a kind of vegan lifestyle, we can create that path for them. In fact, Smallfood is one of 30 companies competing for the Global X Prize competition, which is to develop a scalable and highly nutritious fish fillet. So that is kind of how we're kind of going beyond just producing an ingredient. The technology that we have has been scaled up as high as 5,000 liters, which means that we've kind of validated that it's a very scalable organism. That the metrics, performance, metrics kind of hold consistent as we go from flask to 10 liter, 100 liter, 1,000 liter to 5,000. But we'll be looking to produce at scales between 100,000 liters and up to 300,000 liters. And that's really the next phase that we're at, is really working on acquiring the capital to construct a facility that has that large commercial capability, as well as working with contract manufacturers. There's not a lot of them out there that work in the fermentation space, but there are some, and we're really looking to work with them as well to help scale it up to that next level. And we already have, it's exciting, we have a lot of customers that are eager to purchase the ingredients once they become available.
Another question, kind of a follow-up, if you don't mind here. In land-based agriculture, if you will, we're starting to see a lot of consumer demand to get more natural, more native, regenerative agriculture, this type of thing. How do you sort of reconcile that with the idea that what you're doing is in a lab or a factory? How does the consumer respond, or how do you get around that idea of it?
Yeah, we actually consider ourselves part of that regenerative agriculture movement. By reducing the pressures on our natural resources, it allows us to take some of the conventional ways of producing food and just do it better using some of these newer practices. Yeah, it's, a lot of people think, oh, it seems very, very techy. You're growing, algae, that used to grow in the ocean. You're going to grow them in these big, tanks. But, when you think of it, like when people think of beer, they don't think of beer as some weird science experiment. They see that's just, a nice part of kind of our food and beverage, industry, and using, very kind of natural and ancient methods. I mean, fermentation is really one of the first kind of biology, food production systems that ever existed, going back several billion years. And we're also trying to interface with agriculture and this movement in agriculture in different ways. We actually have a partnership with a technology that was spun out of Dalhousie agricultural campus, and using some of our bioactive peptides in a formula, an organic biostimulant formula that has pretty amazing properties. So that's just, once again, showing the versatility. When you have organisms that produce this really unique chemistry, it just takes a lot of time and patience and the right scientific approach to fully explore what are the real potentials here. So we definitely think that we can, be, a good agent for fostering this kind of regenerative agriculture movement.
Okay, yeah, that's an interesting spin on it, on that side.
Yeah.
What do you use for feedstock? Is there an agricultural component there?
Yeah, we've been kind of as part of our, the various kind of parallel streams of scientific development. One of the things that we've prioritized is the feedstocks, and so fermentation is, of course, uses sugar, C5 or C6 sugars, but that can come from quite a different array of sources. Most fermentation companies, or almost exclusively today, use corn sugar. So that's one option. It's not necessarily the best option, although the organisms tend to grow very, very well on corn sugar. We're working with producers of food ingredients that have side streams, things like starch, which today is unfortunately a waste product for them. And we've already kind of shown that we can actually take some of these starch sources and convert them into a feedstock for our particular organism. We've also looked at side streams from biodiesel. We've looked at side streams from agricultural commodities that have a lot of waste due to maybe I think everyone kind of appreciating now within agriculture that the products that go to market have to meet a very specific spec, and some of that is very cosmetic. And if it doesn't meet that cosmetic spec, then it's kind of tossed in the other bin, unfortunately. And there's just a tremendous amount of food waste that happens around the world. And so we're really kind of exploring quite a few different options to make what is already a sustainable platform even more sustainable.
Okay, can I ask about, should I say, funding streams or program streams? Where do you find, how are you finding Nova Scotia to help you financially with what you're trying to do here?
It's a great environment, for startups, and that's happening on multiple levels. I mean, we now have organizations like Ignite, like Nova Scotia Innovation Hub. We also have the BioNova, NSBI.
Mm-hmm.
We have ACOA, all kind of with this regional focus to help de-risk some of the early stages of these types of really technology-based startups. So in addition to that, I'd say like money is one thing, but startup is a bit of a psychological game as well. And so I find that these organizations really transcend the money, and they're just part of this support team that is helping to make new connections for you, just giving you some different ideas and perspectives, in terms of trying to address the challenges that you're facing. Sometimes it's just the moral support, which comes in really handy from time to time. And I contrast that sometimes to larger centers that have that hyper competitive mentality, is distilled all the way down into that startup environment. And I don't think that's very healthy. I think here we have a better balance between competition and collaboration. And I think, tomorrow's economy really has to be the hyper collaborative economy, not the hyper competitive. And especially within food, we're already kind of trying to forge all kinds of different, partnerships that will help, create acceleration for us, but by finding where there is synergy, where you can collaborate, and really build kind of reciprocity in the relationships that you really depend on for your business.
Oh, that's great stuff to hear. One more sort of line of questioning. This just came up on something you mentioned there, and it bounced around kind of our office here for a little bit. The idea of, how should I put it, fermentation as a research area or something that we could do differently or better off. Somebody put it up on a board here one day that Nova Scotia could be the center of fermentation for the world, because we do sauerkraut and beer and wine and what you're doing, and there's a number of other things. Is there any value in that idea, I guess, from your perspective? And I see Annette here, and I kind of know what you do. Is there something, is there something worth pursuing to make Nova Scotia sort of the fermentation capital of the world, if you would?
Yeah, that was, it's interesting you point that out, because that was really the, part of the vision I was holding kind of in just considering whether or not to do this and whether or not Nova Scotia's or Halifax is the right location to do that. Then, it eventually got to the point where, I think Smallfood wants to, in some capacity, become that center of excellence for fermentation technology and help to coordinate and connect all the various, what are still a bit disparate pieces of
Yes.
that fermentation ecosystem that does exist today. In addition to the ones that you've listed off, we also have the National Research Council. The Ketch Harbor Institute they've been doing world-leading microalgae research for 2 decades. We have some great research going on, at Dalhousie and Acadia. There's definitely some gaps, but I think absolutely in terms of, I think where you were going, Brian, do we have the collective resources and assets in place that with a focused and directed kind of strategy, could Nova Scotia or this region of Canada become that one of the centers of excellence in fermentation technology? I believe wholeheartedly that the answer is yes, and I'd love for Smallfood to kind of play a role in that.
Okay, thanks. Could someone make an action item to follow up on that? An interesting rabbit hole to go down at some point in time. Ryan, oh, there you go. You took your audio off.
Yeah, I captured some notes out of that for sure. That's
Thank you, Mark. That's really all I have.
Thanks, Ryan.
Great learning about what you guys are up to.
I had a question about, so you guys are saying that you're growing and looking forward to that. What types of positions are you expecting to hire over the next, few years as you scale up?
Yeah, it's going to be quite a growth trajectory, I think, for the company. So right now we're currently actually hiring for our first fermentation technician roles, someone to really support the R&D team in the kind of day-to-day production of our ingredients, and then with a view to them kind of ideally then stepping into a lead of when we start to scale up to more production level volumes. Also, with that comes all kinds of maintenance of interesting and finicky equipment. So we're looking for someone with a great technical knowledge of the handy fix-it person to help support the team and take on the tasks of that kind of really owning the proper functioning of the equipment. So that'll be a really interesting role too for the right person. From there, we really are, going to be led by our team growing into that production level. So once we get some of our refit, upfit, upscaling of equipment into more sort of production level scale, I guess is the best word, then certainly we'll have lots of people doing different operators roles. We'll need engineers, we'll need IT systems built to support the proper functioning of those pieces of equipment. We'll need more HR, people, all of the usual roles that support the business as well. So that's kind of how things are going to grow.
And from purely an R&D perspective, I'd say, based on our forecast over the next 3 to 4 years, we could be adding as many as 20 research roles into the company. So we always consider to be, research one of our core assets, and so we'll have a really well built out, R&D team to support all these different kind of ingredient and market opportunities.
One of the things we really want to do is create a structure where people can grow within the company too. That, people can start with us maybe relatively early on in their career, move into different areas, and have a couple different streams of growth, because the traditional stream of people getting into management and leading people and leading large teams is a great stream, but that doesn't work for everyone. So when we are able to scale up our R&D team as well, we want to have other possibilities, other paths for people to follow to get into more and more, grow their own career, grow their own experience, but not necessarily in sort of the traditional ways. So that's something we're working on as well, as we are, even in this early days, we want to get that strategy pretty clear so that we can develop it as we go.
Is there a certain type of person that you think fits really well into that? Is there, do you have to have a certain kind of personality to be a small fooder?
That's a good question. Right now, you have to be okay with the relative instability and freneticness of startup, because that's a real. Any of you that have worked in that situation know it can be really exciting, really groundbreaking, but also a little bit almost ungrounded and can feel a bit, just frenetic. So right now, I think that's really important, that people want to be here at the start of something really interesting, and that's going to be really big. That will level out as we become a bigger company and more stable, I guess, with more sort of specific systems. But I hope we always keep that energy. I think it's our intention to do that, of, an energy of innovation. And I know that's been Marc's, I'm pointing out because he's actually sitting over there. So that's been, I think, one of Marc's dreams for this, for this sort of center of excellence and fermentation, being a world leader in fermentation. So that will always have, some parts of the company will always have that real startup, innovative, fresh thinking, fresh, look at things kind of feel and culture.
Great, thank you. Few minutes left here. Anyone from the Smallfood team, any closing thoughts or any last messages? It's we're recording this, and we'll be sharing it outside of just the folks on this call. So anything else you wanted to share?
I should probably say too that we're really committed to our co-op program. Julia and Emma are our sort of first cohort, and now we're planning to have 3 co-op students at any given time, or for each of the 3 sort of winter, summer, and fall terms, because they've done such a great job and they've really supported the team. And that's one of the many things that I think we can do to help, kind of put our money and experience where our mouth is, and helping to create this, experience from a fermentation perspective. So I'd encourage anyone in co-op programs to look and hopefully apply and work with us at some point.
Perfect, thanks. Tristan, Kia, Annette, any closing questions or thoughts?
Not for me, but I just wanted to say thank you to the Smallfood team for joining us today and giving us a lot of information about how Smallfood works, and also answering some really great questions that we especially got from Brian.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, and none from me, but just thank you as well. It was really informative. I thought I knew quite a bit about Smallfood, but learned even more today. So it's awesome. Yeah, thank you guys.
One thing I've learned about Smallfood is there is always more to learn about Smallfood.
So true. Yeah. Well, thank you. Thank you so much on behalf of Smallfood. Thanks for the support, and so committed to growing our bioeconomy sector here. And we'll be in touch, and And we're happy to answer any other questions that, come once you post this up online.
Sounds good. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Awesome. Have a great rest of your day.
Thanks.
Thank you.